All right, guys, we got a big old feud going on here. We got a fight among some well-known people here that I'm going to break down for you. So, Keith Olbermann went after Stephen A. Smith. Now, I'm going to read through what he says here. I'll get into the specifics of why not only Keith Olbermann, but other people are really pissed off at Stephen A. Smith right now. Then I'll get to Keith Olbermann's video on it, and I'll break it all down for you. So, Keith Olbermann says, why ESPN must either silence or fire Stephen A. Smith. Its longstanding policy, no, you can't be a sportscaster on one station and an advocate for a presidential candidate on another station, is right. I know. I helped to author it because the day when you or I could straddle both worlds is long gone. So in other words, what Keith is saying is, I was in a position where I was doing sports on the one hand and politics on the other hand, and ESPN was uncomfortable with that, so they basically were like, it's one or the other, homie. And now he's mad because Stephen A. Smith on his own podcast gets to talk about politics while still having a deal with ESPN. Okay, and being the number one guy at ESPN. So why is today's ESPN letting Smith do it? Why is he campaigning for Trump on Fox News? That's a lie, by the way. We'll come back to that. He is not campaigning for Trump on Fox News. ESPN must make him choose advocating for a despot or keeping his job saying nothing particularly relevant about sports, not both. And I'd insist on the same either of if he were that's a weird sentence. He'd insist the same even if he was campaigning for Biden. Okay. And Trump's stochastic threat number 1 million, he wants his thugs to be allowed to protest at the front of the courthouse all over the country. Okay, so he's going on talking about some other shit here. Let me just play the video for you, because this is what he says about Stephen A. God, look at his face. Remember when he did those videos for like GQ and he would go on these unhinged rants and it was very strange? He certainly lost the sauce from like back in 2004 or 5 or whenever he was relevant. All right, let's watch this.
Here are the headlines from the Tuesday edition of the Countdown Podcast, now live wherever you podcast. ESPN must either silence its top figure, Stephen A. Smith, or fire Stephen A. Smith. Once upon a time, a long time ago, you could be on one television channel talking benignly about good old sports, while you were also on another television channel talking about party politics, partisanship, and even endorsing one presidential candidate over another. A long time ago. I know this because I used to do it a long time ago like 2010. But this is no longer 2010. So why is ESPN letting Stephen A. Smith go on Fox News and campaign for Donald Trump? They either have to silence him or they have to get rid of him.
All right, so let's break this down. Why is Keith Olbermann pissed at Stephen A. Smith? Why are other people were pissed at Stephen A. Smith too? Well, he went on Fox News, which he does somewhat often, maybe once every month or two, something like that. He went on Fox News. He talked to Sean Hannity, and Sean Hannity brought up the polling data that shows that Trump has gained a lot of support among the black community in particular. And I think specifically black men, right, is where more of the black support is being picked up by Trump. And look, on the polling data, that's inarguable. There was a number of polls that came out over the past couple months that showed Trump doing better, not only with black people, also with Latinos, also with young people, he was doing better. So Trump's biggest weakness is like suburban women and just the suburbs in general, but he was making some strides among black people, young people, Latino people. That's a fact. Okay, so that was brought up by Hannity. And Stephen A. Smith went on to echo a similar point, which we have made fun of previously, where he said, Trump brought up the reason why black people are beginning to like me is because I'm being persecuted unfairly by the justice system, and they can understand going through that because that's happened to them for a long time. I think that point is dumb. I think it's super condescending to black people, as if like what? They can't determine based on the facts of individual cases whether their sympathy is merited. They can feel bad for somebody who goes to prison unfairly because of some dumb, mucked up drug charge. They can understand that, say that I feel bad for, while also saying, no, this guy is charged with 91 crimes because he committed 91 crimes. This guy tried to overthrow the election. This guy committed like 14 different kinds of fraud, which he was just found that he has to pay $454 million for all that stuff. So I don't think the reason he brought up is the actual reason why there are some more black people that like Trump now. By the way, it's still not it's not that much, but it's more than it was. Usually Republicans got like 5% of the black vote or something like that, and it's more than that. So do I agree with Stephen A. Smith that that's a real reason why black people are now supporting Trump at higher numbers? Of course not. I think it's less about Trump and more about people are just pissed off with Biden for a variety of reasons. You could point to any of a number of things. Okay. So Stephen A., I think, is wrong about that. But Keith Olbermann says he's campaigning for Trump on Fox News. Not only is he not campaigning for Trump, he doesn't support Trump at all. Stephen A. Smith was just on the PBD podcast, and they were basically begging him to vote Republican and vote for Donald Trump. And he was basically like, no. Like, no. I got problems with Biden. I got problems with the Democrats, but I voted for Biden in 2020, and I'm going to vote for him again. So for Keith Olbermann to say he's campaigning for Trump, look, I want to be kind here. Maybe he's just misinformed, but it certainly feels more like a lie, doesn't it? Because, I watch Stephen A. Smith stuff all the time. He's sort of like an enlightened centrist. I don't agree with all of his political takes. Maybe it's like a 50-50 type thing with him. But, he did not say that. He does not have that position. And it is very obviously checkable to see whether or not he has that position. So he took something Stephen A. Smith said, and he misconstrued it and said, oh, he's campaigning for Trump. He supports Trump. That's not true. That's not true. Okay, so now let's get to the core of it. Should Stephen A. Smith be fired from ESPN? Because sometimes he talks about politics, and while he also talks about sports, and Olbermann wasn't allowed to do that, so Stephen A. Smith shouldn't be allowed to do that. Here's my answer. No, he should not be fired. Why do I say that? Look, I don't know how to break this to Keith Olbermann. The reason why you were fired actually has nothing to do with the fact that you were talking about politics on the one hand and sports on the other hand. The reason you were fired is because you're a fucking psychopath. Nobody likes you. Nobody likes you. Guys, I'm in this business. I know people who are in this business, this political commentary, pundit business, whatever you want to call it, right? The fact of the matter is, everybody I've talked to who knows Keith Olbermann, who's worked with Keith Olbermann, every single one of them has said the same thing in a remarkably consistent fashion. You don't understand. He is crazy. Crazy. Treats his staffers like shit, treats everybody like shit, demands a million things, yells at people. So, look, they may have hid behind, we don't want you doing politics and sports at the same time, that's why we're firing you. But that's not actually why you were fired. You were fired because nobody fucking liked you, and you annoy the shit out of everybody. And as weird as you look on camera, you're just as weird and terrible in real life. Okay. So Stephen A., I guess people like him behind the scenes. I guess the bosses like him. I guess his fellow employees like him. I guess the people who work underneath him like him. And by the way, he also has two separate things. One is his own podcast that he got approval to do. He's doing his own podcast. And then on the other hand, he works for ESPN. Those are two separate jobs. He does what he wants on his podcast, and then he does what ESPN tells him to do on ESPN, right? So, look, I hate to tell you, Keith, but that rule in the first place was kind of dumb. I think people should be able to talk about sports, politics, whatever the hell they want to talk about. The rule was dumb, but the rule was just a front. It was a veneer for the reality, which is nobody likes you, and that's why you were fired. You're a psycho, and that's why you were fired. Okay, so sorry, but Stephen A. should be allowed to say whatever he wants on his own podcast, do the ESPN stuff, go on Fox News, go on MSNBC, go wherever. That's all fine with me. It should be fine with everybody. And again, this comes from somebody, I don't agree with Stephen A. on a lot of things. I don't. He's an enlightened centrist. I find that kind of goofy and cringe. But also, and again, the final point, which I'll reiterate an earlier point, just don't fucking lie. Don't lie about what his position is. He's not campaigning for Trump. He didn't endorse Trump. He's not voting for Trump. In fact, the story came out a couple months ago where he was begging, I want to debate Trump. So, yeah, there you go. People just don't like you, Keith. And this is a good example of it here. The fact that you're either just totally wrong or lying about Stephen A. And in the process, you don't know your facts on it, and you're like, you need to get fired. What a loser. What a loser. Anyway, Team Stephen A., even though sometimes he's cringe, and sometimes I disagree with him, he's very entertaining, way more entertaining than Keith Olbermann, and clearly way more balanced mentally than Keith Olbermann. All right, guys, that's the show. Love y'all very much. You know the drill. Everybody, please click like, click subscribe, all that fun stuff. Click that bell icon so you get a notification every single time a video drops. We have Dave Smith on Crystal Kyle and Friends this week. You're not going to want to miss that. We're going to talk about Israel, Palestine, Gaza, his debate, all sorts of stuff. All right, guys. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you then. Peace. Hey, y'all. Do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.